Madelein Santibanez is a co-facilitator for the folklife-centered Participatory Action Research Project called Circles in the Hood, which incubates next-generation leadership striving to end the school-to-prison pipeline through data-driven advocacy. Madeline is an abolitionist and veteran community organizer, educator, and danzante of Purépecha descent. She has over 10 years of experience developing and implementing youth participatory action research, cultural rites of passage, and teen pregnancy prevention programming in the occupied territories of Yanaguana, San Antonio. She is currently the youth development specialist at the Corazon Circles and serves on the board of Southwest Workers Union and Society of Native Nations. Her political education was cultivated on the front lines of the largest socialist movement in the Americas, the Landless Peoples Movement in Brazil, and her leadership is rooted in her dedication to the preservation of Indigenous epistemologies, which we've talked about in class, and the revitalization of generational resilience. I'm so grateful for your time, and thank you so much for being a part of our learning community. And yes, let me change it so you can share screen.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. While she allows me to share my screen, I heard there's folks from the East Side. I'm actually born and raised on the East Side. I graduated from Sam Houston High School, and it is tough out here in the hood, especially when you know, you have person of color and you know, lower income. I myself, I was a first generation American, and so my parents are from Mexico. They're both undocumented and no longer live here. But I'm really happy to see like a diverse group present here today, and it always makes me happy when I hear people that are, you know, come from our neighborhood, you know, and especially you know, hard backgrounds to be able to make it to this level in your academics journey. I'm really proud of each and every one of y'all. So yes, my name is Madelein Santibanez. I'm actually also, I just started a new job doing harm reduction with our houseless community on the east side of San Antonio. So I am also leading the first federally funded harm reduction initiative for people that are, you know, in the trenches, you know, and dealing with opioid abuse and addiction. And so I wanted to highlight that because that is very prevalent in San Antonio. And one of the biggest issues that we face in the hood is that generational trauma and that those addictions to different substances that, you know, prevent us from really honoring our sacredness and each other. So that's a little bit about me, but I want to get to you know, what Circles in the Hood is and its purpose. And I'm going to oh, can I do this? I got a new computer, y'all. So it's it hates me. I had to download Zoom y todo. Okay, let's see. I see me. So Circles in the Hood, y'all went ahead and you know, saw the Feminist in Cell Block Y, and that's a movie, a film that we show our students to actually, you know, to talk about we have both male, female, and gender nonconforming students in our spaces. And so the screening of not only just the Feminist in Cell Block Y, but healing justice films and, you know, films that, you know, get our students to start thinking about that generational trauma that exists in our families, in our communities, and within ourselves is really important to this process of, you know, understanding the root causes of the issues in our community. And so I'm really happy that y'all took the time to watch that and to debrief and reflect on that, because that really is the core of what we do in our Círculo, is to unpack, you know, our baggage, to acknowledge our blessings, and to like take action towards removing these systemic barriers that exist at home and in our communities and in our schools, so that our future generations don't have to experience this. And so usually when we begin our círculo, which you already did, and I would love for you to think about this, maybe respond in the chat, is, you know, who are your people? Who are you accountable to? And how are you showing up today, right? Or how are you waking up every single day, right? For this reflection to be at the top of our mind every single day is a practice and a ritual that we share with our students, which is the most basic part of the círculo. The circle process is an ancestral practice that has been passed down to me and my comrades, you know, in a very ceremonial and a spiritual way. I myself, I am a palabra of our Calpuli. Our Calpuli is a collective of families that was created to preserve our culture, our traditions, our song, and our language through our ancestral practices. And so my family is from Michoacan, we're Purépecha. We have families that are from Mexico City, Oaxaca, Chiapas, both North, Central, and South America. We acknowledge that as human beings, we're all ultimately indigenous to the earth. And that is the unifying like factor, you know, with people from the hood and beyond, right? Is that like what roots us in our practice is this acknowledgement that we are interconnected and we're all interrelated, and you know, and that imbalance, that addiction, that suffering that we carry with us is a reaction to the suffering, you know, of that comes from our adverse childhood experiences, from that trauma that we experienced growing up. And how we heal that is through the connection with each other and with the earth and the different elements. And so here in our círculo, we always have an altar, a centerpiece, where the 4 elements are manifested, both the fire, water, an air element, and the earth. And through those 4 elements is how we move to reconnecting our youth to themselves, right? Through breathing techniques, movement, meditation, nutrition, and acknowledging, you know, our ancestors and each other in the circle. So we always begin with opening to the directions with a land acknowledgement. And so, and after that, we move into sharing a palabra. And for us, palabra means, you know, the giving of one's word. That means integrity, giving of one's heart. And that's something that for our community is really hard, because we've been lied to. You know, we've been accustomed to being, to lying to each other, to hurting each other. And so this concept of palabra can be really hard for some folks, right? To be able to make space for others to share their palabra, and to really, when it's their turn to speak, to share with integrity and with honesty. And it's something that we're continuously, you know, polishing throughout this process, is that integrity and that discipline, and that, you know, ultimately like recognizing one's and each other's sacredness, and treating each other with that love and that respect. It's a continuous process. And in Gesh is one, I don't know if you've covered in Gesh in your class, but in Gesh is Mayan. It's a Mayan golden rule that translates into "you are my other me." I am you, you are me. We're mirror reflections of each other. And it's a chant that we start off our círculo with every single time. And it's our solidarity chant, to acknowledge that the African-American struggle is the same as our indigenous struggle, and it's the same as our farm worker struggle and our working class struggle, right? It's all the same, you know. Through that political education and that awareness of our history, we learn, you know, that the root causes of these problems, right? And through our different, you know, like concept mapping that we've done with the youth, it always comes to the root cause being capitalism and exploitation and just, you know, profiting off of each other's, you know, weaknesses or strengths, right? And so, or taking advantage and manipulation and all of these things that are a part of the culture that we are born into. And so with this chant, we always begin with a clap, right, from the UFW movement. Kemakatsin Mochiwa from the Indigenous Peoples Movement. Isang Bagsak from the Filipino farm workers. Halabak, we got your back from the Black Panther Party. And then it goes into a call and response where, you know, we are committing to showing up into the Círculo with that acknowledgement that, you know, there is no judgment. There is just love and respect, and that each and every one of us are sacred. And we have conversations around how we're not, you know, a lot of us are not viewed as sacred when we're born. As children, sometimes we're told that we're mistakes or we're burdens or we weren't, you know, they didn't ask for us to be here, right? And so that misconception begins early in childhood, you know, and we're working with the intergenerational group of youth, you know, from elementary all the way through college, right, that are coming to explore how these ancestral folk like arts and knowledge and practices can help us heal and resist. But it's this longing for this connection to self, right? And because of that constant, like, you know, dehumanization that we experience in our communities, right? Of not being worthy of love, or not being worthy of that respect or that honesty. And so a lot of our kids that we work with, you know, we're processing and unpacking a lot of the trauma that they've experienced in Círculo through the sharing of one's word. And so, as you saw in the film, you know, this is an ongoing journey, and sometimes people don't realize, you know, how much that trauma has impacted until it's too late, until they're facing death row, until they're incarcerated, you know, and it's something that we want to end, right? The school-to-prison pipeline that has been created and documented is failing our students. It's you know, these structures that are in place, you know, don't really provide our students with the social and emotional skills that they need to cope with everyday reality of capitalism, right? We're not, we're, you know, just trained to go learn, regurgitate information, and test out of our grades and our subjects. And you know, our students are dealing with so much more than just academic, you know, like factors. And so they are needing to know how to hold space for themselves, how to be able to hold space for their families, for their own parents, right? These things aren't taught anymore. And not in the homes that our students are a part of, which this is a part of a greater movement also of mending and building power and resilience and resistance, so that we can help transform those systems from within, from the bottom up, from within our homes and outwards into our communities and into our greater, like, criminal justice system. This is one of the guiding questions that we have for our group, is in recognizing how healing affects the way that you show up in this world, how you show up to class, how you wake up every morning and you know, prepare your breakfast or nourish yourself in the way that you do. And so, and how can that healing help grow your capacity to nurture more you know, more restorative, like, practices in your home, right? Many of us, you know, we are, you know, I mean, I can speak for myself, but I grew up in a very violent home where my parents didn't know how to speak to us, right? They would lock us in our room and leave for hours, right? And just leave us there. That neglect and that abuse is real. And our parents don't even recognize it because they grew up with it, right? And then they just pass that on. And so that this is a question that we always like reflect on in our spaces, and push for, and that allows us to push for more restorative practices in our home and in our community. And recognizing that this isn't just a philosophy, but a practice, right, of communicating the impact of harm that has happened in a nonviolent way, right, and recognizing our feelings and knowing what we need in that moment, and really communicating, like, what we want in order to repair this harm. And so this is a language, this is a mindset. Restorative justice is a way of life. It's an embodied practice that it takes, it takes polishing, right? Even if you were to go to this workshop or, in one nonviolent communication class, it's going to take you having to practice this over and over and over. And so with our circles, we meet twice a week as often as we can so that these students can actually, be able to facilitate these spaces and be able to communicate from their heart. And so this RJ, our restorative justice has been very, very popular right now, on social media and even within our educational systems. And it's important to acknowledge that this is this is an indigenous practice, and this was rooted in our cultures, Aboriginal cultures worldwide. It was common to see circulos in South Africa during their rites of passage, right? When young men and women would enter into adulthood and sit in circle with their community, where they would be given advice or, be talked to, about this next phase of their life. That's where quinceañeras come from in our Mexican American culture, right? Before, we used to celebrate our youth as they turn 13 into this next phase of their life. And these are ceremonies and practices that have for generations, even though we haven't acknowledged it, ways that our communities have helped, hold space for each other, right? And these are the main principles that come from that restorative justice model based in Aboriginal earth-based communities, is that in these circles, we center the youth, right, and their experiences. We recognize the value of multiple truths. We honor and make space for all voices. We presume good intent and own our own impact. We offer our presence and we trust the process. Circles, sometimes, we have a time limit, and that, in our space, time isn't real, right? It's that circle process can take as little as 15 minutes to an hour and a half, right? It takes as long as it needs to. And depending on what the purpose of the circle is, sometimes our circle is meant to celebrate each other, right? We're doing a circle to celebrate each other's birthday, and we're giving our palabra to that person, right? Or we use the circle to mediate conflict, right? We use the circle as a dialectical, reflection tool, right? For organizing. We use the circle for meeting with stakeholders and having them participate in this process where they can hear our students and their parents and their concerns. Circles, aren't always just about mediating conflict, right? Or having to solve an issue. It can be a circle just to show appreciation and acknowledge each other. So these círculos are, a part of this prophecy of our people, one day our indigenous folks, rising, that sleeping giant rising once again and unifying with all the earth-based communities to bring back this consciousness, this awareness of our sacredness, of our interconnectedness. And so from our homies and elders that have been doing this work, we're honestly, we're standing on the shoulders of giants that have been doing this work for, generations. Our culture heals. And it's in this is the framework for which we guide our program and our curriculum. In Círculo, rooted in indigenous epistemology of barrio pedagogy, of street knowledge, because we recognize that the knowledge doesn't only come from textbooks. It doesn't only come from, professors or from this hierarchy of people that, are teachers, but it comes from our everyday lived experiences of our families and that folk life that exists and in our communities. And so we talk about the root causes, and we assign indigenous names to them, and we reclaim those practices as ours, right? And so that seeking the root of truth, critical thinking analysis tools, we rename it Pancheve, right? And we bring in the Toltecayo, the knowledge that was passed down to us through ceremony, and we incorporate it into our framework, our social justice framework, that is rooted in these core values of love, racial equity, and cultural healing. But really, one of the main teachings in our space is that honoring and prioritizing your wellness is a sacred act of resistance and restoration. That no matter, what we do, how far we get in our organizing strategy, right, to create circles in our schools, to create peace rooms on campus, to have these sacred spaces in our homes, that our main priority is to survive, right? That our existence is resistance, and we have to be present with ourselves and our bodies and with our food and our elements in order for us to stay grounded and whole. And so our students, they've been working really hard in documenting their stories, documenting their communities, doing research. Our main priority is always, for them to take care of themselves. Not everybody shows up to every circle. Not everybody shows up to every action, but our students are dealing with hardcore depression, compounded trauma, anxiety, COVID really heightened, amplified all of those mental health challenges. And our main priority is for them to just take care of themselves and be with family, be in community, and to cultivate that joy. Sometimes we can, within organizing or social justice work, we tend to focus a lot on the issues, right, or the problems, and we try to shift that focus to think about our blessings and our and the things that nourish us and keep us alive, and keep doing those things, right, because our existence is resistance. And so Circles in the Hood, if you haven't followed us yet, I know Sylvia probably shared the Instagram. We are using this platform to share their experiences, to share their their thoughts on what Circles have done for them, right, and for their community. We've had a few news people come out to our space and document our stories. Spectrum News was the last one that we uploaded on our social media to talk about what we did in our círculo through in connecting with the youth with the elements, and it was a really beautiful video. But for us, our circles we're based on this hierarchy of needs, right? Of understanding, like what one needs in order to not only like fulfill our own personal like goals, but to transcend into a point where we can help generate that wealth and generate that joy for our entire community, and to transcend beyond just our individual needs, right? And that was by, you know, asserting themselves through palabra in the circle, to understanding their own power, right? And acknowledging their sacredness, to understanding the structure of democratic institutions and the key power players in those systems, to critically analyzing those issues of injustice in our community historically and in the present day. And then through social media and like film, audio, documenting our process, persuading people with their words, you know, and through their arte, they've been learning how to screen print, block print, do digital art. They make their own graphics, they write their own quotes, they take their own photos, you know, and in our círculo, leveraging that wisdom of the elders that we are privileged to have in our community, so that they can mobilize, you know, at a larger scale eventually after going through this process. Our circles, you know, it's a participatory action research project, which it means that you're actively participating in researching and documenting your story, your community, not for anything else, but for the community, you know, not to gather data for any institution or to gather data for any, you know, stakeholder, but for ourselves, so that we can create opportunities to address the problems, the root causes of those problems ourselves, for ourselves and for the future. And so that happens, like I said, through, you know, self-awareness, like recognizing our own baggage, learning different research methodologies and researching our communities and our families, and then doing data informed youth advocacy, and speaking to the mayor, speaking to the city council officials, and demanding land for these spaces of like communal healing, and creating policies and recommendations for schools to be more equitable, and have like resources for the students who are you know, like having to navigate these systems. You know, sometimes they feel like alone, right? And sometimes their counselors, even though they have counselors, they're only focused on top 10% and getting those into college, right? They're not really helping to deal with, you know, the mental health challenges that are prevalent in their schools. So we've gathered data, all kinds. You could see it on our social media, and we're still gathering data through our surveys, through our focus groups, through the different círculos that we have all around the city, through documenting individual lived experiences. We actually started doing these círculos at the Casiano homes. We wanted to make sure that we were connecting with the youth from the hood that didn't have access to these leadership opportunities, and that, you know, we saw were, you know, not being supported, or there were no programs that were engaging them, specifically at the Casiano homes. Like it's a very, you know, like marginalized community, right? It has like a lot of historic murals, and there's people that have been there for generations, right? And we felt like, you know, that was a perfect place to be able to do this work, because, you know, kids were out and about at all hours of the day with no supervision. And, you know, they were in gangs. There was a shooting on the basketball court about 2 years ago of a 14-year-old boy who got shot and killed there. And so we were like, you know, I'm from the east side, my homie's from, you know, far west side, but we knew that no matter where, you know, this was our people, this was our community, Black or brown, wherever they're at, you know, they were deserving of this access to these tools, these that had been passed down to us. And so we chose to start it up at the Casiano homes and at the Wheatley courts on the east side, and bring those youth and start having círculos with those youth. And right away, obviously, like we moved at the speed of trust, because these youth, they didn't know us, right? This was a brand new project. I've been doing youth organizing for quite some time, but we were wanting to start up a new youth circle. And so that required building relationships. That meant me going and playing basketball every other day at the courts, going from Casiano Homes to Wheatley Courts and just playing ball, right? And just and connecting with them on the court. Because for a lot of our youth in the hood, it's a distraction from everyday life. Is you could play for hours and hours and never get tired, because these youth don't want to go home, and so we saw that, organizing on the court was like a good organizing and like recruitment strategy, because they were already, they're just there chilling. And so all we had to do was bring in our elements, right? The fire, the wind, the earth, and the fire, wind, earth, and what's that fourth element? Water. Yeah, water is simple. And so we played ball, at the end of it. Then we busted out our centerpiece, our elements. We assigned them to different people, and we had a talking circle. And that's how it started. Then, little by little, we started taking them around their community, doing community walks to, analyze the different murals in our community and talk about them. We've had, since then, since May, we've had bigger intergenerational circles where we've been able to bring in our elders from our different Native communities in San Antonio, from the Coahuiltecans to the Somisec, to the Carrizo Come Crudo, and to different elders that are doing work in our community, and to bring them and document, how this sharing of knowledge and learning from these experiences has helped them. And so it's been like about 6 months, and our students have been able to generate their own graphics, document their own stories. For Taylor is a gender nonconforming youth who wants to be the first trans Fiesta queen of San Antonio. And it's been a process for them, because at first they didn't talk at all. In the circle, this talking piece goes around and people have the option to share or pass, and they would always pass, right? Until recently, when we have started doing circles in the podcast room, right, at a VOD pod studios, where like all of a sudden, like they were like, this is it, I'm going all in, and sharing their story, and and we got to hear how healing the space has been for them. Although they didn't speak for a long time, they would just show up. It was a place where they always felt welcomed, and they wanted to create more of those spaces for everyone, despite people's sexuality or gender identity. And so it's these stories, that we want to continue sharing with people, right? So that we can generate that joy in our community, and it just more importantly in our home with our parents, right? With our siblings, with our friends. We've had círculos everywhere. We've had círculos at the park, círculos at the city council, city hall, circles in schools, and not everybody is receptive to it. People are like, still all about punitive discipline practices, in school suspension. There's people that are, old school and don't believe that these youth need access, deserve access to these spaces, or that our youth will take advantage of these spaces, right? But there are people like Terry Castillo, like Jaden, city council members, stakeholders that do know, like the value of these things. And so we have, one of our biggest supporters is Terry Castillo, who right now is in the process of, creating a space, a communal healing space that is led by youth, for youth, that's going to, have they're gonna, because they have the resources to do that, to allocate, land and funds for this project. And so we're really excited about that. And I hope you stay tuned for the creation of that project. But our youth are really, the ones leading this. And we are very thankful for our pod, our network of organizations and community people that are supporting and seeing these youth as assets, right? And as resources, as and really like helping them to lead. We don't have a home. Our circles are mobile. They go and they move around in different places. We've been at the Esperanza Peace and Justice Center, the Rinconcito, the Yanaguana Herbolarios. From east, west, north, and south, people are wanting to elevate and amplify youth voice. And so we recognize, and it's that idea of like all being interconnected and being indigenous that has helped to like keep these ties like strong. We all have similar values, and this is a plethora of community organizations that I hope that you all can get connected to. If you are also seeking these tools, right, or these experiences, these trainings, there's folks doing herbal medic training to help out our homeless community. There's people doing curanderismo. They have apothecaries. They're teaching. They're sharing their knowledge. They're for free, right? And so there's in connecting our youth to these organizations, we're helping to create a strong support system for them, that they're not only reliant on me, right, or our crew of circle keepers at Circles in the Hood, but that they know that they're going to be safe when they go to Society of Native Nations land, right, or they're going to be safe when they go to Yanaguana Herbolarios, that they're going to be seen as family when they go to Southwest Workers Union, right, and that that they're connected to community gardens, they're connected to broader movements, right? That it's not just, like this one entity, wanting to do it all, right? That we're part of this like network. And that's how we stay sustainable, right? Because like we wouldn't be able to do all this work all by ourselves. And we can't take credit for all of the work that has been done by these folks that have been around for over 35 years, they're the OGs in this movement. So we acknowledge them as that, and we provide pathways for our youth to be able to lead in those spaces too, to be able to be represented in their boards at the leadership level, to help our students gain those tools to be able to be the voice of their community, to be able to step into the school board and say, hey, this is what's happening on the ground, and our voices are important, and you have to listen to us. It takes some time to get there, but through círculos and through practicing of one's palabra, of walking with that integrity and embodying this practice, is how we generate real authentic leadership within our community. So our purpose is to incubate this next generation leadership, right? To these youth are the next city council person. They're the next mayor. I believe that they're going to be the next CEO of all of these out of school time programs, because they've been through this process of healing, of gaining these tools, and of understanding how things and power is those power dynamics are manifested in our relationships and how we interact with each other, so that to prepare them to be those leaders, and to have those tools. It's all about leading from the heart, right? It's our healing justice framework is that that spark that generates life within us, right? And so our priority in Circles in the Hood is to cry, laugh, have fun, support each other, show up for each other, show up for our people, right, whenever they need support, or those that can't speak for themselves are not present, to be able to make room for those voices that are not at the table, right? And I can talk forever about Circles in the Hood, right? But this is a really new, a brand new initiative. Honestly, it started in the summer, in May of this past year, and it's taken off because of all of those networks and community organizations that are a part of this, like this collective vision for like for healing in our community. And so we wouldn't be here without them. Our project isn't funded, you know, like we haven't asked for donations. Our youth are the hustlers. Like we make our own shirts, we make our own merch, we sell it, we vend aguas frescas, you know, on weekends. We because our youth, you know, they don't want handouts, you know, they want to be able, you know, they're really proud of generating their own funds, right? Of knowing that they put in the hard work to make this money come through so that they can create opportunities for other youth to have these círculos. And so from these funds, we've been able to go to Copernicus Park on the east side and have círculos that are facilitated by these youth, you know, for the younger generation or those that haven't been in circle before. I want to show you some pictures, but I don't see. No, I think I missed it. But we get these, we've trained youth right in May up until now, about 6 months. Some of them have graduated from researchers, right, from being our scholars, of just going through that process of researching their own lives and their communities, to being circle keepers, right? They've actually, you know, graduated and, you know, because of their leadership skills and because of their commitment to their own self-discipline, you know, we've been able to, you know, cultivate some circle keepers that now facilitate their own circles in our community, right? And they determine where they want these circles to be, right? They've taken initiative to organize circles for their volleyball team on campus. They've organized circles for their home, right, with their parents and their siblings. They've organized circles like just in the hood, just randomly whenever, you know, they end a game of basketball, you know, because they see the power of these circles. And so with this, it's helping us accomplish that vision of building self-healing communities, of people having the tools that they need in order to create and hold that space for themselves and for those that they love, right? And not have to depend on anyone or organization or person to do it for them. And so it's a real, like, I'm really proud of how far we've come, and how much more we like these youth want to do, right? In connecting them with other youth that are doing this work nationwide and even globally, right? Our goal isn't limited by like our dreams aren't limited by funding. We're not attached to any nonprofit organization. We're not attached to an institution or a school. This is a very like just grassroots and autonomous initiative that anyone can take up, right? Like with the proper training around circle keeping and like political education, anyone can hold these círculos, right? And so we're committed to, you know, supporting this next generation infrastructure and leadership within any community. And so we provide, our youth are getting to a point where, you know, now that they have that experience of implementing, you know, of hopefully training other people, that the next group that comes through around these practices and these ways. And we're really excited to see that, just so that it can stay sustainable. But if you ever think about, you know, starting a circle at home, or need, you know, want to do a circle with community at school, or even in your workplace, hit us up, right? And you know, it would be an honor to bring our youth to you and for them to share how our circle works. And you know, you take what you need from it and you do it, right? It's different than our ceremonies. Our ceremonies are circle processes, but those, you know, like those are like, you don't have to do all that. You know, our ceremonies and our spiritual practices are something that sometimes our youth are gravitated to, right? Like, because they want that extra healing. They want to go into a sweat lodge. They want to go to do fasting. They want to have a rites of passage ceremony for themselves, you know, and those are things that are accessible to them, right? And that they never knew existed, right? And so there's an opportunity there for them to walk along this path, right? And reclaiming their indigeneity and being a part of the spiritual community. But those circles, you know, are a ritual in itself, and is something that, you know, doesn't require you to integrate the full, like, you know, like the full like commitment, because this is a way of life, right? Of like being on this red road, right? It's kind of just you know, it's just like the cherry on top for anyone, because then it respects and acknowledges all of our different beliefs, you know, and spirituality, and it honors the root of all of these practices, you know, which is that golden rule of treating each other with love and respect, and honoring our sacredness, and recovering our sacred purpose. So yeah, it's I'm gonna end with that, because I mean, our circles aren't ending. They're gonna be continuous. They happen organically. Our food is the main thing in our circle that sometimes is hard to manage, but we could end up cooking like for everyone. Our circles end up being like 15 to 20 people at a time, and so cooking rice and beans for everyone, and eating nachos, or you know, like anything with rice, beans, and corn interchanged, from tacos, nachos to tostadas, can feed a village. And so we've been able to you know, bring that into our circle process of preparing and cooking food for each other and holding space for each other. But that circles in the hood. And I would like to open it up to any questions or comments, or things that people, you know, might want to share. You know,
I have a question. What kind of resistance, if any, do you get from the kids' parents? Because I know if I had brought this up to my dad, he would have said, men don't do that, you know, that sort of thing.
we haven't had any resistance, honestly.
Really?
Yeah, partially because the youth that we engage are already, like, they're already the ones that were just hanging out and chilling at the park with no supervision. So a lot of the times for their parents, it's a good thing, right? Oh, it's like, yeah, take my child, because, you know, they're just going to be playing basketball on the streets anyways, right? And they've actually been really receptive. Everyone in our circle has to have a circle with their family, right? That's mediated by one of us, and their parents have actually been really like thankful for those practices, because they've been able to like have that space to communicate with their child. And we're actually going to be starting our book club with our parents of recovering your sacredness. And our parents do come from a lot of different religious backgrounds, and it's a neutral, you know, we're not indoctrinating or imposing anything that's not, you know, like you know, sacred, and like, and love, and it comes from love, you know. And so our parents have been really, you know, accepting of it, and they join our circles whenever they can. And yeah.
Great, thank you.
We have a question in the chat about someone coming from Puerto Rico and Panama, longing for a journey into connecting with Indigenous roots, but not having an idea where to start, or what my ancestry begins. Any advice? And I think that's so relevant too to so many folks of Mexican descent here in San Antonio, right? Feeling like, how do you respectfully start that process?
Yeah, and we're made to believe we're not from over there or over here, you know, we don't belong anywhere, that Pantla state. But as I said earlier, you know, that indigeneity of being from the earth, all being children of the earth, is what connects us, you know, to that identity. And reconnecting through the elements is I think one of the easiest and first things that we can do to reconnect is by being present with the water, right? Praying with our water, you know, knowing the power of manifestation. I myself, I'm a math and physics graduate, like of Texas A&M, and that's all we learned is, you know, theory and that, you know, that quantum physics and how the power of intention and manifestation can help to change the molecular structure in our bodies and in our elements, and to help like amplify those dreams and visions for ourselves. And so praying with your water is key, waking up and taking care of yourself, nourishing yourself with healthy food, breathing, you know, as much as you can, reconnecting with, you know, that fire inside, that passion, that even a literal fire of building your own fire at home, you know, using incense or bringing that of meditating with the candle, right? Of just reconnecting with those elements is a great way to reconnect with your indigeneity, and just acknowledging that every action has a reaction, a consequence, right? That, you know, where we invest our money is really important, right? Of giving, of honoring our time, valuing ourselves and our resources, and really just like showing up for each other and being present and mindful of how we walk on this earth is like a good way to reconnect. But we're all indigenous to this earth. And, you know, some people have a problem with that, you know, but because indigenous, you know, like that idea of indigeneity and people like culturally appropriating our practices and stuff, it can be really harmful. But I think there's a new movement arising where, you know, like our communities are wanting everyone and anyone, whether you're from Europe or Africa or Asia, you know, that we recognize our like our reliance on this earth, and that, you know, like taking care of those resources and ourselves is imperative. Yeah.
And then this will be my last question since we're already at time. But thank you so much for this beautiful, amazing presentation. Like, I find myself taking notes to remind myself about our sacredness. And so I'm so grateful